Hey, it's Kristen from Core Word of the Day, and I wanted to talk a little bit about learning cycles. I get a lot of questions about this, and I wanted to just cover some information about it. So, Core Word of the Day essentially is when you take between 32 and 36 core vocabulary words, and you teach one word per day about a 10 to 15-minute lesson until all those words are taught. And the number of words is important. You want to not go too far above 36 words because otherwise you can't really cycle through them as, frequently enough, and it sort of defeats the purpose of doing core word of the day. So once you've taught all, let's say right now we are using 36 words in our cycle. Once you've taught all 36 words, you're going to start over again and teach those words in a slightly different order. Um, and you want to cycle through those words about 5 times in a school year if you're a school person. The idea to teach core words isn't my idea. I first heard about it at a literacy workshop that was put on by Doctors Karen Erickson and David Copenhaver. And they literally wrote the book on literacy for individuals with disabilities. Their book is called Literacy for All, Comprehensive Literacy for All. Definitely you want to check that out. And they've referenced this article, which was called Enhancing Alphabet Knowledge Instruction, Research Implications, and Practical Strategies for Early Childhood Education. And that article was really talking about teaching letters of the alphabet. And the research showed that you really want to teach an alphabet letter every day rather than a letter of the week. And the only reason that we teach a letter of the week is it's just convenience, tradition, whatever. It's what we figured out to do when we were teaching these things. But there's no research that says that it's beneficial or better to teach a word of the week. Um, and so in that article, they suggest you teach a letter of the day and then you cycle through those letters until you get to the end and then teach them in a different order. And Doctors Erickson and Copenhaver said, we think that this would apply to core words as well. And y'all should teach a core word of the day. And we all kind of lost our minds because we were like, had barely wrapped our brains around how to teach core words to our learners. And we were making assumptions. We had just, let go of the myth that these words are too abstract and too hard for our students to learn. So it was a bit of a mind shift for all of us in our county. Why do we want to do a core word of the day? Let's take a look at this visual. This is a visual of what happens when you teach a core word of the week. So in this instance, there are 32 words taught, one per week. It's the second week of May before you're done teaching them all. So that's a long time, and we know from just regular old vocabulary instruction research that we want to bake in time for repetition, and review. And it's really hard to do that if you've just gotten through all the words and it's May, there's no time for repetition and review. Alternatively, if you look at this visual, you've got 32 words taught at a rate of 1 word per day. You can get through all 32 words by, kind of in a month and a half. And then you can cycle through those words 5 times by the second week of May. You're almost done cycling through those 5 times. So that is a lot of exposure. And really the goal of core word of the day is exposure. It is not, the goal is not mastery. The goal is exposure. And this allows a lot of exposure to those words. And there's a lot of benefits to this. These are brief lessons. And they allow you time to do other things like literacy. You want to be teaching those literacy skills. Seriously, get that comprehensive literacy for all book and implement those things for your emergent learners. Another thing that it does is it increases the frequency of exposure to the words so that our learners don't get stuck. A lot of learners who have had intense therapy, often, those words have been drilled and they get stuck on those words or they become obsessed with those words and they're overusing those words and they really don't know what the word means. They kind of are just trying to please you by saying this word. So we want to, eliminate all of that and allow them to see here's the word, here's where it is on your AAC system, and here's how you might use it in a real context. And we hope that by exposing them again and again, when they actually need to use that word, they will pull that word out and use it. And that takes time and a lot of repetition and a lot of exposure. And there's benefits for both learners that don't know a lot of words and learners that already know some of the words. And here's what it is. For those individuals that really have had no exposure to these words, the good news for them with Core Word of the Day is they're going to get exposed to those words faster, and they're going to get an opportunity to review and revisit those words throughout the year. For those learners that already know some of the words, they're going to get exposed to those words they don't know yet quicker. They don't have to wait till May to get to those few words that they don't yet know. They're going to get all of those within a month and a half. They will have been exposed to all the words. So they're going to pick up those words quicker if they're not waiting months and months and months to get to the words they don't know. Lastly, as educators, we get a little bit stuck in our modeling. I know I do. I tend to lean heavy on 5 core words, more and go and stop and etc. I get kind of stuck. We all get a little bit stuck. So when you do these words in your classrooms, especially, it's going to help everyone in the classroom branch out with their modeling. You do start to realize words like all. We use all the time. We say it way more than we thought we did. We should be modeling that more. Question words. We don't model question words enough. And when you introduce those and teach them to the group, everybody becomes more aware of those question words. So let's talk a little bit about the cycles of learning. A lot of people want to know, is there a particular order in which I'm supposed to teach these words? And the answer is, we don't know yet. There isn't research. I think it's underway, but it's not done yet. So there isn't yet research on what order you're supposed to teach the words in. However, if we take from that alphabet knowledge article, they don't really suggest a word or a letter order in particular. What they're doing is they're suggesting that you leverage some learning advantages that those letters have. For example, they say in the article that first you should teach all of the letters that are in your learners' names. Because they've presumably already been exposed to those in print. They're somewhat familiar, and so it's like the low-hanging fruit is going to be a little bit quicker and easier for them to learn those first. So that's a learning advantage that you can leverage. And so what I try to do in the Core Word of the Day group is to take a guess at what some of those learning advantages might be for core words. And so I usually pick one of the first cycles that I always do is verbs first. And I got that idea from Erin Sheldon from Assistiveware. And this made a lot of sense to me because if you teach the verbs first, verbs are a nice base on which to add other words. When you get to teaching pronouns, pronouns are very awkward if they're standing by themselves. But if you've already taught the verbs, then you can pair the verb with one of those pronouns, or you can pair the verb with a descriptive word. It makes it easier to teach the rest of the words in the cycle. So, no research yet, but that seems like a good idea. I usually make one cycle purposes and functions of communication so that we don't get stuck modeling one function like requesting. We often get our learners get very stuck on requesting. So if you teach different purposes and functions of communication, commenting, asking questions, protesting, refusing, saying no, all that good stuff. We want to make sure that our students are well-rounded and they greeting, social interaction. We want to make sure that we're teaching all of those different functions and purposes of communication. Pairs and opposites, that comes from just regular old vocabulary instruction research that you want to teach what the word is and what it is not, or you want to teach the word and other words that are like it or go with it. So you are being more efficient when you teach those words together because their contrasting meanings help our students understand. And I usually do one cycle that is all questions, all core words used in the form of a question, because we don't model questions or teach how to ask a question nearly enough. We do not expose our students to enough of those questions. We fire questions at their head all the time, but we're not teaching them how they might ask a question themselves, and that is really important. So let's take a look at the core word of the day group, and I'm going to show you a couple of ways to locate these learning cycles. And one way is to go find the title of the group. Underneath the title, you will see these tabs. You're going to click the File tab, and that is going to take you to where there are lots and lots of files stored in the group, things people have posted, things I've posted, the core word slide decks. So I see here's cycle 3. So I can hit these 3 dots and I can download that cycle, and then that is going to download, and I can open that up and use that if I so choose. Another thing that you can do is you can use the link in the caption below, and that is going to take you to this live Canva link where you can see the same cycle. So if you don't do Facebook, don't worry, you don't need Facebook. What you do need, however, is a Google account, and you need to be logged in. You are not going to be able to, when you click on these symbols, it's going to have you make a copy of the slide deck that you can keep and modify and edit for yourself to meet your needs. And you're not going to be able to do that if you are not logged into Google. You're going to get an error message. I know some people have been having trouble with that, and that's usually why, is that you are not logged in. So if you don't have a Google account, make yourself one just for these if you are not a big fan of Google. So what you're going to do is you're going to click on here if you wanted to teach that word, and then you can make a copy of that slide deck. The first page of the learning cycle has all the words in order, and then a little bit of information about the cycle, how to teach a core word, very, brief thing. And then each of these pages just going to gives you the words of the week. Use these if they're helpful to you, or make your own. So a lot of people will say, I want to do my own thing. I want to follow my own path. I want to teach the words in the words that I want to teach in the word order that I want to teach them in. That's great. That's fine. Do that. These are just there to help those of you who are very busy, don't have a lot of time, don't want to make any decisions. These are there for you if they're helpful to you. If not, do your own thing the way you want to do it. So I hope that helps to explain a little bit about learning cycles. Um, have a great day and get out there and teach those core words.